Sometimes you just have to stay a little bit humble, wait for your chance, and at the end of a game, when you're not winning, score that all important goal. This is the Arsenal Raw Reaction Show. Hello and welcome to the Gooner Talk, back again with you guys and girls for another episode of what is our Arsenal Raw Reaction Show, joining you the morning after, the evening and afternoon before, where Arsenal picked up 3 massive points in the Premier League, but they left it late against Leicester City and took advantage of course, some other results that went on Saturday afternoon. Good morning to those joining us live in the chat box. Thank you as always for doing so. It is incredibly appreciated. Good morning to Matt G, Paul Blackshine, Damien Arasilki Olawale, Vivian, Rich, Knowledge, Jose, Christopher, Babatundi, Steve, Martin, NSW, Stephen, John, Red Star, Temi, and plenty more of you guys and girls in the chat box as well, including Nick, who's been a member now for 20 months and asking the question, was there ever any doubts? Of course not. No, I don't think anyone was panicking, were they? I don't think anyone panicked at any stage at all yesterday. It was, of course, perhaps not the way the game was supposed to play out in our minds or even in the minds of the players as well. And there was expecting, but we're going to get into all of that and more. Before you join us for the first part of the show, second part will, of course, be jumping into the chat box and taking some of your questions. Please do drop a like on the video and subscribe to the channel if you're new. We are at a very fast pace over the last few days. I've noticed a lot of new members to our TGT family. We're closing in now on 60,000 subs. We are around 61 away from hitting that milestone. So if you are new, first time you've watched the channel, where have you been? First of all, you've missed like thousands of shows. But please make sure you do subscribe and join us on this journey as we close in on this big 2024 target of ours. Right, jumping to the slides though. Arsenal leave it late, but again, get the job done. And that's what's obviously the most important thing here. Arsenal getting the job done on Saturday, sorry, afternoon. It's already Sunday now. I'm losing time. But already Saturday afternoon, getting the job done, leaving it late, but a dramatic victory and one that will leave us in good stead going into the game against PSG on Tuesday in the Champions League. And yeah, 9 goals in 2 games. In fact, 9 goals in 4 days. Arsenal have scored. So yes, we conceded a few, and that will definitely be part of the discussion. But you can't say that Arsenal don't create chances these days, can you? Martinelli scored, of course, the first goal. Lovely finish, sweeping the ball into the bottom left-hand corner from a great cross of Jurien Timber. And then he set up Leandro Trossard, of course, for the second goal. Calafiori was involved in a lot of the build-up for the left-hand side, and there's been some stats going around, of course, of the numbers that Martinelli has produced since Calafiori has joined him in that left-back position with, of course, 2 assists and a goal to his name in the last 2 games. I did feel as though when Martinelli scored, and I don't know if you felt this too, I felt as though that Martinelli kind of arrived in some ways. I feel like his confidence just shot up. It was kind of like a weight had been lifted from his performance, and he just seemed much freer in what he was doing. We saw a player, of course, that I think has been somewhat hamstrung recently in what he's doing. I think he's a player that has suffered a great deal in what he's tried to do more recently. But I think he really did kind of take himself to a different level once he'd got that goal. There was a shot he had before he scored that on the left-hand side on his left foot missed the target. And that was that moment I was like, is it going to be another one of those Martinelli games where he has these chances and isn't even hitting the target? Well, he had a very similar chance after he scored, which was saved by Hermansen, who, by the way, the Leicester goalkeeper had absolutely stunning performance in the Leicester net yesterday. But he hit the target with that next shot after he had scored. And I think just that was enough to kind of highlight the difference between the 2 moments that we've seen so far from the player, which I thought was also really, really good. But yeah, just on the goalkeeper, like Arsenal had 36 shots yesterday. 36 shots, which is I'm trying to think of the last time. Maybe West Ham at home. Arsenal had more than 36 shots, 16 of those on target, and there was a crazy number, more than 10 saves, I think, made by Hermansen on the day, who was just ridiculous in net. That mattered for quite a long portion because, of course, Leicester City came out at the start of the second half and really caught Arsenal a bit napping, to be honest. Arsenal weren't at their free-flowing usual best as they entered the second period. And I think the comfortability and the dominance of the first half had kind of put us into something of a false sense of security. That's the way I felt as they came out. Yes, they were still creating. Yes, they were still threatening to a degree, but they were a lot less kind of alert. And Leicester took advantage of that. Of course, it was very fortunate to get the deflection of Havertz for their goal. That, of course, got them back into the game. But the goal from James Justin was stunning. Absolutely stunning finish from James Justin. It's a shame in some ways for Leicester fans. Of course, they won't come away with this game with anything other than 0 points, because in a game where you score a goal like James Justin did, absolutely brilliant strike. And certainly one of the best, if not the best goal he will ever score with his right boot from that cross. And after that point, they didn't really get any more opportunities. And it was all on Arsenal to try and find and break their way through the opposition. And Hermansen was taking shots and saving them, and the frustration was growing amongst the fans. Arteta made some changes, bringing on Sterling, bringing on Nwaneri, of course, as well. And those two changes definitely helped increase the intensity of Arsenal's performance and led to, of course, 36 shots overall being taken. But it was in the 94th minute that eventually Leandro Trossard scored that all-important goal. Now, so far, this has gone down as a Wilfred Ndidi own goal, which I think is an absolute travesty. I did hear after the game that Arsenal are apparently appealing that decision, and that hopefully it will be overturned at some point, depending upon whether or not the shot was on target. It looked like the shot was on target from Trossard. It was a very meaningful touch from Ndidi, of course, that sent it into the back of the net. But the relief, the ecstasy, the excitement in the ground when that ball hit the back of the net. But I don't know about you. While there was definitely nervousness and there was worries, I remember watching the game against Manchester United at home, and I remember the game against Bournemouth at home, and I remember these games where Arsenal desperately needed a late goal to win it. But I never felt as though Arsenal were in too much danger. It was almost like an inevitability that I felt like we would score. I didn't get the same senses that I got in those games that I thought they were heading towards a frustrating end. I did feel I felt confident that Arsenal were going to get that goal and that eventually it would come. And I don't know what it was. I haven't felt this way about those previous games that I've mentioned. There was just something of a calmness that I had even extra time. That I wasn't getting frustrated. I was smiling. I was cracking jokes with Kaya next to me about stuff, and I just felt so calm in the end of this game. And it was an inevitability that I think Arsenal would score. And Trossard, who I thought had a really good game, and of course there are a number of question marks about whether Trossard should start this game or whether or not he should come straight back into the team or whether Nwaneri should start. Trossard earns, again, of course, with scoring an important goal in the first half to get us 2-0 up, but of course also making the play which ultimately got Arsenal those points. He is the best finisher in the team. And if you want him in those moments, if you want a player to get on the end of a chance, you want him. He did have another chance that was really well saved, of course, after a mistake off the playing out for the back from Leicester. Hermansen did really well to save it, but I thought maybe he could have done a bit better with that finish. He was, of course, one where you would say that the player has to score, but he makes up with it with that goal. And then, of course, Kai Havertz scores the easiest goal he's ever going to score in his entire life when he gets the ball just booted off his knee and into the back of the net. I did find it hilarious that the referees and the officials tried to rule this goal out, and it took forever. I mean, I have the benefit, of course, having the little TV screen in front of me, and I knew within seconds that the goal was fine because Havertz might be offside as the ball is played to him, but the ball's played to him by a Leicester player. It's booted off of it's booted off of Havertz by a Leicester. I don't know why it took so long to confirm the goal. We had people in front of us from the press box, like fans, turning around looking at us because, of course, we've got the benefit of the screen, saying what's going on. I'm like, it's going to count. Like, this is a goal. Like, I don't know why they're taking so long to confirm this. It was really strange, really, really odd that it took so long for them to try and somehow find a way of not giving it. Yeah, it was a very legitimate goal, and Havertz won't score an easier one than that, and it was very fortuitous for him, but he will absolutely take that, and as will Arsenal, and of course will our goal difference as well. There was a couple of performances I just wanted to bring attention to beyond just the game itself before we go to your questions in part two. The first of those is, of course, Jurrien Timber, who I thought Jurrien Timber was gloriously good. Now, don't get me wrong, I'm a massive, massive fan of Ben White, and I wrote about this in my piece that's gone out this morning. Watching Ben White's evolution and his growth into becoming one of the best fullbacks in the Premier League has been an absolute joy to experience. And I do genuinely believe Ben White remains one of the most impressive right back of the last year. However, my goodness me, did we miss Jurrien Timber last season? What a signing this is turning out to be. His technical ability, his understanding of the game, his tackling, his passing, his reading, his running, his defending. He is so good. And he's so good on both sides. He could play anywhere. The guy, I mean, I know fans have said that he could play in midfield. He probably could. I wouldn't do it, but he probably could. And both Timber and Calafiori being added to this team brings such a element of security to this side, and such an element of ease, if you will, to this team that we have, of course, been lacking for quite some time. It is just so good to see. So good to see. And I saw Ben White after the game. He was moving very comfortably through the mix zone. So hopefully there's nothing wrong there. Nothing too serious, at least, of course. There was that. It was suggested that he had an issue before the Man City game. And of course, he was in the squad for the Man City game, I think, out of necessity. Hopefully it's not too bad. Hopefully he's going to be fine. Hopefully he'll be back next week. I saw Miko Marino as well, again, looking like he's moving very comfortably. So good news on that front. But Calafiori and Timber have proven to be already very, very impressive signings, I think. Calafiori's tackling in the final third, not in our defensive third, in the final third, was really good. I loved his intensity. I love his reading. He times his tackles really well and takes the pressure off in certain moments. That said, he is very lucky to be on the field. He should have been sent off. If that's the other way around, I'm sorry, but I am screaming for the opposition player to get a second yellow card. So despite the fact I'm very complimentary of Calafiori, he was very, very, very lucky not to get a second yellow. And with the state of the officiating and the fun of the narrative around Arsenal, I was shocked that he wasn't given a second yellow. Absolutely shocked. At the same time, how Oliver Skipp is still on the field, I have absolutely no idea. Oliver Skipp gets 2 unpunished challenges in this game. The first one is a horrible challenge, I think, on Martinelli. And then the second one outside the box when he's on a yellow card, stamping down on Saka's foot outside the box, which, by the way, I think it's Sam Barrett was the referee, or Sam Barrett, I think it was. He gives an advantage after Saka's been fouled very blatantly by a player that's already on a yellow card just outside the Leicester box. And he plays advantage to, I think it's Calafiori, who then passes out wide, but it doesn't lead to it. I think he passes off the pitch. And he doesn't bring it back. Like, that's not playing advantage. Arsenal haven't gained an advantage from that. I think they basically played it out, expecting to get the free kick. It was stunning to me how the referee didn't play advantage properly in that moment, especially, I think it was 2-2 at that time as well. It was like the pressure was really on in that moment. But yeah, Calafiori is definitely, in my opinion, in those moments, very lucky to get away with. Like, at the end of the day, Buonanotte is clear and through on an attack, and if he's breaking up a very clear and obvious attack, it's a yellow card just by the letter of the law, which I know is a phrase that Arsenal fans don't particularly like right now. But how Skipp is also on the pitch, I've absolutely. I don't really get how Steve Cooper can come out and kind of argue about the red card when his own player should have been sent off. I think there's an argument from Ndidi as well, maybe getting a second yellow card throughout the game. Also, that was also missed. Was there another incident? And there was 2 incidents as well of delaying of the restart. I wrote about this in my post-match piece. Mikel Arteta, I don't know if the cameras picked this up in the game. It was a 3:00 kickoff, so I know it's difficult for a lot of people in the UK to see it. But there was a moment where Martinelli's trying to take a throw in. The ball loops down. Arteta catches it, throws it to Martinelli, which, by the way, I think there actually may be some rules in place about that. But anyway, regardless, Arteta throws the ball to Martinelli. I think it's Justin gets in the way, kind of pushes Martinelli and knocks the ball out of his hands and stopped Arsenal from taking the throw in, which surely is delaying a restart. You could argue maybe it was accidental. But then there was a moment, I think, later on where Ndidi also, I think, kicked the ball away, or someone else kicked the ball away. And there was no punishment for it whatsoever in the game. This is what we're going to end up talking about because of what the referees, because of what Howard Webb, because of what Michael Oliver have done. This is going to become a running theme of players not getting punished. And Arteta, you could see him on the touchline after the throw-in situation happened. He was pointing at his chest as in like, oh, but when it's us, it's very clear what he was obviously trying to say. He was, oh, when it's us, for us it's one, for someone else it's another. He was absolutely incensed, and I empathize with him completely. Last point to talk about is actually last point of the game specifically to mention is, of course, Ethan Nwaneri, who what a cameo! Like, he was impressive on Wednesday, and I felt that this 10 minutes from Ethan Nwaneri will have done more for his career than the 2 goals that he scores against Bolton. I feel like this substitute performance does so much more for him than that performance against Bolton does. The way he entered the game with confidence, the way he entered the game with purpose, it was so good to see what he did as he came on the field. The shot he had, of course, when he came off of the bench straight away was great. I just thought it was a really impressive. And this is why I've said to people that I would much rather Fabio Vieira go on loan and we give all the minutes that we gave to him to Nwaneri. I don't know why there was so much pushback to that point of view. I really didn't get it, because I know Odegaard got injured. I know people started, peeing themselves a little bit, about Odegaard being injured because we'd loaned out Vieira. But Vieira was never the answer, people. I tried to say it on numerous occasions. It was never the answer. Loaning Vieira, I'm sorry, I had absolutely no issue with that whatsoever, because I wanted all the minutes that Vieira was ever going to get this season to be given to this guy. And he showed me more in these last 2 games than Vieira has shown me in a year. And the purposefulness, the confidence, the impact he has in these games, the direct nature of his play. Arteta said about winning. Arteta brings him up in the press conference. He's not asked directly about Nwaneri. If I would have been, I was in the press conference because I managed to speak to one of the players after the game really quickly, which meant I actually got to go and sit in on the press conference. I wasn't going to ask a question, of course, because that's not my allocation for these for games in these contexts. But I sat in on it just to listen because I thought it was going to be interesting to see if Arteta was asked about City, which he was, which we'll talk about in a little bit. But he was asked about winning in a difficult context, and he says, I'm so happy. That's what I told them. It got nasty. It got difficult. It was emotional, difficult to accept with the amount of situations that we created and the amount of goals that we should have scored, but it wasn't. And now what? You don't feel sorry for yourself. You take ownership. You start taking more risks, everybody. Then he says, without provocation, Nwaneri, 17 years old. He takes the ball. The first one is an action like this. He runs past 2-3 players and wants to take a shot. I just love it. You want to play here. You want to be at that level. You need to play with that courage. I really, really, really value that from the team today. He brings him up unprovoked, and there is a real good chance, I think, we see Nwaneri start against Southampton next week. A really, really good chance that we might see Nwaneri start next week. I think he's earned it. I think he's owed it. I think that he deserves to get a start. And I think that Southampton game might be perfect for Nwaneri to get an opportunity to start. I wouldn't have started him today. I still think it was the right decision not to start him today, and I think Trossard proved that. But I think there's a really good opportunity to start Nwaneri. But the problem is you've now got Martinelli who looks on form, and you've got Trossard who looks on form. So how do you start Nwaneri? Because Trossard's got a couple of goals, in my opinion. Should be a couple of goals. It's one and an own goal, but it should be a couple of goals. And then you've got Martinelli, who's just found his confidence again on the left-hand side. So what do you do? It's a conundrum. It's a question mark. It's definitely something that needs to be worked out. Just want to put Erling Haaland up on the screen and say he for now. We might talk more about Man City in the second part. I don't really want to direct too much energy towards them in the first part. Today, for me, is all about Arsenal. Of course, them dropping points is big. Of course, it means that we're level on points with them after 6 games, where Arsenal have had a far tougher first 6 games than Manchester City, including, of course, drawing at their place, should have won. Of course, going to Aston Villa. Of course, going to Tottenham. And having, Brighton at home as well, and coming from, a tricky situation against Leicester here at home too. Just stay humble, mate. Just stay humble. That's all I'll say to that. And yes, I wanted to address the Mikel Arteta stuff in the press conference. So it was a very strange scenario to be there, because you could get the feeling, sitting in the presser after the game, that there was just, after the comments, of course, that we discussed in yesterday morning's 8 a.m. show about Pep being asked about the time wasting and the professional fouling and the dark art stuff, and then bringing up the 115, it just felt like in that presser, it was like, who's going to ask the question? Who's going to do it? Who's going to ask it? And of course, Sam Dean from The Telegraph, who wrote a fantastic piece in the wake of the game against Manchester City, very much backing Arsenal, supporting Arsenal, and kind of asking the question of, why on earth does anybody think that Arsenal have to play the way that Man City want them to? It was an excellent piece of writing that I recommend you go and check out. But it was Sam who had the bravery to ask the question at the end. Basically, not even the question. Sam put it in a really good way, where basically he just kind of offered the opportunity for Arteta to respond if he would have liked to. Because I think, there would have been an emphasis of maybe not wanting to, especially kind of just trying to dial it down and to control the situation. But I think Sam put it across in a really good way to just give Arteta the opportunity to respond, and he took it. I'll read you the 3 paragraphs here. It's quite a lengthy answer. He says, I can repeat it very clear. I love Pep. I have admired him since I was 10 years old. I respect him profoundly. I am so grateful for everything he did for me and continues to do for me. I consider him a friend. I love and I respect every member of the staff there, because I worked with them for 4 years. And when I say I know them, I know how hard they work. I haven't seen a human being work as hard as Pep and the coaches and everybody in that football club to be consistently winning. And the reason that they are, and it's because they maintain that hunger. And this is exactly what I learn and exactly what I mean. It cannot be any more clear than that. If you want, I can repeat it. If someone wants to damage a relationship, that's not in my hands. That feeling is profound. He knows it. The staff know it. I still maintain today with them, with the board, with the ownership, with everybody, that if it was not, I wouldn't be as genuine, and it is. If someone wants to play something else for me, the sport has to be about that will to win. They have it. I have it. We have it for sure, because we haven't done it. They have it. And even if they want it more than anybody else, we have to learn, and it has to be inspiring for us. And it is for me. And that's what I mean, because I have been there. It is remarkable, and it's an incredible achievement because they have that mentality. Hopefully that is clear. And I think it is clear. I think that the situation has been blown up massively. I think that it's quite right that it's kind of put to a full stop. I'm a bit bored of it now. I like the rivalry. I like the visceral nature of it. But I don't think there's a need to generate headlines for the sake of generating headlines around something where Arteta was very obviously, in my view, talking about kind of Manchester City have been and have done very well with their own, in quotation marks, dark arts in terms of tactical fouling, time wasting. It's all part of games. Everybody does it. Everybody has done it. And if you look at some of the images from the Manchester City game against Newcastle when they're leading 1-0, there are times where there are 11 men in the box for Manchester City trying to defend against Newcastle. It's just the way that it goes. sadly, the wider context is away from both of the clubs, and more specifically, I think, on the media, to an example, the way in which Arsenal were spoken about, the way in which Arsenal were criticised after the City game was embarrassing. It was a joke, quite frankly, how some people decided to just use it as a way to bash Arsenal. It was an incredible performance with 10 men in a second half where Arsenal had absolutely no right to get anything other than a defeat in that game. They held strong. They held out with a lead until the last seconds of the fixture with one man less against the best team in the world, and they managed to secure a point, which should have been 3 if it wasn't for a very fortunate deflection, which led to John Stones kicking the ball in the back of the net. It's as simple as that. It doesn't need to be overanalyzed. It doesn't need to be talked about as an inferiority complex on Arsenal's part. It doesn't even need to be talked about necessarily on Manchester City being not as good as they usually are, because I think Arsenal defending limited them, and I think Manchester City did ultimately as much as they feasibly could, without Rodri, of course, as well, to try and win the game and try and get the points. It was a really interesting, intriguing tactical battle, and that's all it needs to be. So for those that feel the need to try and bash Arsenal off the back of a really good performance at Man City, and then, of course, building that up from a win over Bolton and a win again over Leicester, there's just some embarrassment. And I think some people need to take a long, hard look at themselves in the mirror and, quite frankly, think about what they're saying and writing, because it was sadly just a joke from many of usually well-respected people. But that's it. And we're going to go to part 2. But, of course, not before I tell you about NordVPN, which, if you need protection like Arsenal can provide and to stand firm in moments of adversity, well, you can stop people from nicking your data online. Perhaps you're using a public Wi-Fi service in a cafe somewhere and you're worried about somebody logging in and taking your data. Well, a VPN is the way to prevent people from doing that. And Nord is the only way to go when it comes to VPN services. A 30-day money-back guarantee is available, but you can get a significant discount off a 1 or a 2-year plan by going to nordvpn.com/Gooner and get yourself that significant discount off, indeed, either of those 2 options. Make sure you go and check out all the details, the link in the description, or just type in nordvpn.com/Gooner. And best of luck to everybody that entered the Football Prizes competition to win a signed and framed Patrick Vieira Arsenal 2005-06 shirt. It has indeed sold out. I told you, I warned you. I said it was going to go quick. It has gone quick. So best of luck to everybody that's got involved with this competition. I hope that we can pick up a winner. Sophie's been picking up a few winners, I've noticed. We need to bring this back. We need to start getting some winners in the TGT community. So let's make sure we're constantly checking those competition pages, UK only, as always. But thank you to Football Prizes and to Nord for sponsoring the channel. This is part 2 of the show, and we're going to jump there right now, right after this. Okay, this is part 2 of the show where we tackle your questions. I'm going to address the fact that I probably look quite fuzzy on your screen at the moment. That's because the connection this morning on the Wi-Fi dongle that I've got isn't great. But I can tell you that we are going to be getting Wi-Fi installed in the new place, hopefully, fingers crossed, tomorrow. Hopefully. So after tomorrow's 8 a.m. show, hopefully Tuesday's show is going to be a lot clearer, a lot better connected. I won't be looking as fuzzy as I do to you right now. Hopefully, it's all going to be fine from that point forward. So forgive me for being very fuzzy. So I can only apologize for the fuzziness. I might try and just use, because if this isn't working on this side of things as well, I might try and hotspot off my phone and see if the 5G over there is significantly better. If it is, we'll try and hop over to that and hope that that's better. But we'll start tackling some of your questions after I've done this. I may cut out for a brief second, so stay with us while I just try and change. Are we back? Is this better? Hopefully it might click over. It might improve very gradually, but hopefully it's gonna get better for you. And the signal will improve dramatically in just a short moment. Right. Let's jump into the chat box, shall we? Oh, yes, it does look like it's improving. Lovely stuff. That's good. Right, let's go to scroll up in the chat box a little bit more. Guns and Yellow Ribbons. Good to see you in the chat box, Fergus. It says 1,000 people are watching and there's only 240 likes. Let's make sure we hit that like button. Please do hit that like button, people. It would be very much appreciated. Abdul says Martinelli's style was not sustainable as he kept getting injured. He has been trying to work out a balance and I believe that he's found it with Calafiori's support. I never doubted him. MD says the answer is good from Arteta. He clearly meant relative to winning games and nothing to do with any of the alleged financial breaches. City changed their tactics to win, so why should Arsenal not do that as well? You're absolutely right. Pratika says Arteta isn't going to burn bridges with Man City because he knows when Pep goes, they will come for him to leave Arsenal and go to City. I don't think that's the case at all, mate. I don't think that's the case at all. Nelson says Nwaneri showing more in 10 minutes than Vieira's ever, in a strong statement. Definitely not true, just a bit of recency bias. The times we saw Vieira come on and get an assist and win penalties. Nelson, I think you misheard what I said. I said I saw more from Nwaneri in those 2 appearances than I've seen from Vieira in the last year. Not since he arrived. I said in the last year. So make sure you quote me correctly, Nelson. Sean says, I still don't trust the Chelsea defence over a full season to call them title contenders. Top 4 looks very likely for them, but they let in too many brain fart goals to be trusted. I think Chelsea eventually, it's going to come for Chelsea. We'll just have a quick look at Chelsea's results over the last few games. I know Cole Palmer's been absolutely fantastic and continues to carry them. Their results this season, of course, losing to Manchester City in their first game. They scored a lot against Wolves in a very open game. They drew with Crystal Palace in a game where they just didn't take their chances. And, you know, it was a poor performance. They won 1-0 at Bournemouth. Bournemouth were the better side in that game. Bournemouth should have won that game against Chelsea. West Ham were horrendous when they hosted Chelsea last week as well. So, I'm not buying into the Chelsea hype. I think anyone that's watching Chelsea understands that the underlying metrics are not very good and that eventually they are, eventually it's going to come for them. Eventually it will indeed come back on them, and we'll see that in very clear and obvious ways. I mean, their upcoming fixtures, just to give you an idea of who they're facing in their upcoming games, scrolling down a little bit more. They've got Liverpool. They've got Forest at home next. Then they've got Liverpool. Then they've got Newcastle. Then they've got Manchester United. Then they've got Arsenal. So they have a very, very difficult run of games. Then they've got Leicester and then Villa and then Southampton away and then Spurs. They've got a very difficult run of games, Chelsea, coming up. The point where it could make or break their season. So let's wait and see what happens after the next month or so of fixtures. Pablo says, mate, Arteta is an Arsenal boy and won't be a Man City employee. Those days have gone, and City can take our best players of the season as well. Those days are gone. Anyone worrying about Arteta going to City, I just don't see why you would have that worry. And if you are worried, it's because, of course, you still rate the guy exceptionally highly. Late Bloomer says it will be interesting to see how Arteta coaches and develops Calafiori. At the moment, he seems fiery and a bit naive, and he will have that coached out of him. He will be improved. He will see that growth, and I expect he will become, a lot more measured in his approach. But I just hope we don't lose the good aspects. The good aspects of his game, I hope, are kept, and the flair that is alongside that is kept as well. Jabu says, which game do we expect Odegaard and Marino to be back? I think I know Arteta was saying that there's a chance we might see Marino next week, Southampton. I think it's much more likely that we see them against Bournemouth. Odegaard, we're not 100% sure on how his recovery is going, but of course there is an international break after Southampton. So hopefully that game against Bournemouth, what might be when we see Mika Marino, who knows, maybe Odegaard as well. Granny Poo says, do you agree that Kai's overall game with and without the ball just keeps getting stronger and stronger? He's a bit of a Granite and Alan Smith combo. I see what you're saying. There was a lovely flick to Trossard in the build-up for one of the better chances in the second half. He had a few moments of just some really nice touches, continued to just ply away. He just works so incredibly hard. He had a header that went over the bar. He had a shot from outside the box, of course, that went just wide of the post. Of course, I want to see him scoring more goals. And he did score. It was a very fortuitous goal. Of course it was. But I want to see him scoring more. I want to see him adding more. And I want to see him continuing to do what he does. But he had a record last season of a goal or an assist of a better of 1-in-1 last season, which was better than Erling Haaland's, as I've pointed out on a number of occasions. Of course, it's not been as consistent this season so far. His record is still very decent. He's got 4 goal contributions in 6 games. So better than 1 in 2 records. He needs to get a few more. He's got 5 in 8 across all competitions, of course. But yeah, I want to see more from him. But his overall game and his contributions to the team is really, really important. Chunho says, we have yet to lose this season, and yet we are portrayed by the media to be struggling to score goals. And with our defensive tactics, they didn't even consider how well we have done considering our injuries too. It's just the way it is. We can't get too bogged down about how we're portrayed. We just need to do what we're doing and just keep playing like we do, and good things will come. Good things will come. Masabulele says, I can't get over this. Skip fouls Nelly, kicks the ball away. Another Leicester player kicks that ball away in the same sequence, only to see a foul given. Same with Ndidi, Justin, and Bruno Guimaraes earlier. No choice. It's inconsistency is what it is. And we're going to see this, and we're going to see these highlighted every single game. The inconsistency, how Arsenal are punished for it, but other teams aren't punished for it. It is absolutely crazy. Tim says, how soon do we think that it'll be till Ethan starts in the league? I think there's a good chance against Southampton, but maybe we'll have to wait a little bit more. John says, how much does Nwaneri cost if someone wants to buy him? We always do this. We always do these. It's impossible to know. It's impossible to know. He's priceless to Arsenal at the moment because he's a very young player that we don't know what his ceiling is. We don't know what he's going to be capable of in the long term. So let's just wait and see. G-Dog says, what do you think about Man City's mentality? I think they don't have as much belief without Rodri and De Bruyne that they can win games. Well, of course, this is 2 games in a row without either of them, Rodri starting but coming off very early in that game, and they failed to win both of those games. Inter Milan, of course, as well. They didn't win either. So they're not on the best of runs, our City. 3 games without a win. Long may it continue. Liverpool are a team that, of course, we need to be wary of. They've had a very fortuitous start to the season. Have Liverpool. They're against a Wolves side that were pretty depleted because of a bug that was going around as well. So they've been very fortunate, and hopefully Liverpool get put in their place soon as well. Justin says, what's your thoughts on Rice, Tom? I really see what you mean about Rice being better as the DM. Rice was battling the midfield against Leicester. I think that I can't wait to see Mikel Moreno come into the team and for him to play alongside Declan Rice. I think that is going to take things up to a new level. I really, 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 really do hope that we can find this new level with Moreno in the midfield. I think that is going to... I just think with Partey coming out, Rice going to 6, and Moreno going into that left 8 role, it's going to create... I think it's going to level us up. I think it's going to take us to another level of our midfield, especially when Odegaard is back, of course, as well. That's going to be very, very exciting. Very, very exciting. So, yeah. I am going to end the show there. I know I've been going for around 40 minutes, and we had a long part 1, but my throat isn't great this morning again. I've still not completely got over last week's illness, I don't think, and I'm still a little bit struggling. So I am going to take this opportunity to end the show. Thank you so much, as always, for tuning in. It is incredibly appreciated. Please do jump with us tomorrow morning into our 8 a.m. show. I'll be rounding up all the Premier League action from this whole weekend and any news going into that big game against PSG. We'll have a preview show tomorrow afternoon as well for that game against PSG. So make sure you look out for that one. Lots of excitement to come. Lots of fantastic games to enjoy. Make sure you drop a like before you leave us. It would be hugely appreciated. And have a fantastic rest of your weekend. I hope it's good for you. Stay safe, stay well, stay happy and respectful. And as always, up the Arsenal.